The following presentation is brought to you by kmmedia.pro. Please visit kmmedia.pro for more information. Now stay right where you are as we present. Welcome to Positive Talk Radio, evolving ideas, one conversation at a time. Great guests, dynamic stories and interviews, plus new thoughts on a wide range of topics and concepts. I hope that you'll hang with me, Kevin McDonald, my friends, and of course, you. As together we work to understand why we are all here and what we can do to make our world a better place for all of us. To be happy, be kind, and live in peace together. Yep, that's Positive Talk Radio. And welcome everybody to another episode of Positive Talk Radio. First of all, I got to ask you, because technology being what it is, and me being a neophyte at some of this stuff, did that opening play okay?
Sure did on my end.
Okay, it sure sucked on my end. But that's okay, as long as the audience gets it, then it works out. That's perfect. One of my favorite people on the entire planet is with me again today. I just love her to death. Her name is Scottlin. She's a actress, or an actress or an actor. What should because sometimes they like to be called an actor, and even if they're a female, it's an actress. Which would you prefer?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I first started with actress, and then I thought, I don't know, there's sort of like it's really old school connotations at this point around an actress, and kind of like, there's this old sort of sense that they were of maybe questionable character sometimes. I don't know, ask my mother. So then I decided to go by actor. I said, let's just go with the generic. And then I was informed by pretty much all the women in Hollywood that no, it has to be actress. We're proud of being an actress. So actress it is.
It's amazing. Just a simple word like that, and it draws up all sorts of different things from our past and where we came from and all that kind of stuff. So
Totally right.
She is an actress. She's an author. She's a podcaster, and she does wonderful work. She's a wonderful lady, and she actually has mailed me the book that I'm going to be reading as soon as it gets here. And I thank you for that very much.
Yes. I actually forgot we were meeting today. I hadn't consulted my calendar, and I was like, oh, this is great. He'll have it before we talk next time. And I'm like, whoops. Oh, well, next time.
We'll have it when we talk next time, because you are coming back again.
Yay.
Now you've evolved. I don't know if evolved is the right word.
I am evolved, Kevin. I'm very highly evolved. Thank you.
You're welcome. But you've transitioned from being an actress to doing much more than that. And where did that transition come from?
Wow, it's so interesting. So I think I was we've talked some about my past on this show in previous episodes, and just how I came from an extremely remote, conservative, and isolated upbringing. And some of my natural talents, which were encouraged in the environment that I was growing up in, was leading, teaching, mentoring, maybe even nurturing. And so those were also some natural gifts I think I was born with. So along my variety of careers and life journey, that kept coming back in. So even when I was acting in Hollywood, and still do, in fact, I had a great audition this morning for a Netflix feature. So we'll see how that goes.
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you. So in Hollywood, I had a studio reach out to me to help them teach. So we were teaching newer actors. And I was also teaching them the business side of acting, because as you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in business for myself almost my whole life. And so I said, sure, absolutely. Why not? And that evolved into coaching actors, both in the craft, but also in the business side. And I realized that was just a really natural gift, like training, coaching, consulting. Those were all hats that I wore with ease. So once I realized that in order to really, pay the mortgage, I would probably have to make more than just teach a handful of actors. And those of us who have been through the starving artist phase totally know what that means. I decided to reach out and get certified at the College of Executive Coaching and Transition because I loved what I was doing so much. I said, I want to bring this into the world of entrepreneurs, into the world of corporate. I want to bring, and that's how my brand was really born around. I got enormous amount of training in emotional wellness. And as you know, my book is called Live for Joy. So bringing joy into people's lives and helping them live a more joyful, happy, fulfilling life.
And in however they decide to do that, that doesn't mean they have to go into the mountain someplace and meditate 20 hours a day. You can be a corporate executive, but you can still have joy in your heart.
Absolutely. Or you could meditate for 20 hours a day. No judgment.
Exactly.
Everyone is different. No one diet fits all, right? People derive joy from many different things in many different ways. But I do find, especially among ambitious entrepreneurs and corporate people who I work with frequently, they get so into the game, plus they've got the mortgage, plus they've got the spouse or whatever, significant other, plus they got the kids, plus, they got the 3 dogs, at some point, the things that brought them like really personal joy just for them get left by the wayside because they become considered non-essential. They're just not essential for survival. Right. So people forget that they used to love to paint, or that they used to love to write, or they always wanted to write that screenplay, or just how can they practice business differently that brings them more joy and makes them less stressed, like just learning to incorporate healthy habits into life to find their joy. So it's really creating awareness and then giving them tools.
Are you helping some executives, or let me put it another way, are some executives coming to you and saying, our current model of doing business ain't working. We're not, our turnover's too high. Our productivity is not right. Our people don't seem to be happy. What am I doing wrong? Are you able to go in and say, okay, here's what you got to do and stuff?
Yes. So myself, and then I also have associates that I work with as well that can come in depending on what kind of strategic part. If they're looking for a specific consulting around business strategy, I work with people who come in and work hand in hand with me. If they're looking to raise the level of performance through, employee satisfaction, overall employee contentment, and their satisfaction with their job experience, then yes, I can come in. Ideally, we work with management on one side. I work with the rest of the company on the other side, and it's a 2-prong. So management gets trained first in what we're training everyone else. And they get extra training in why it's so important and how it's dramatically it affects their bottom line. And then we go and work with the rest of the teams to help them realize that they can build better practices into their everyday life, into their teamwork, into their remote work. And that just because you have a job and you have a life, it doesn't mean you're 2 people. We're all one. So a healthy, happy person makes a healthy, happy employee, vice versa. So kind of addressing the whole person and just like really about being healthy. And being healthy means like feeling your best, living your best, working your best. Why not?
Absolutely. I was shocked the other day. I was reading an article about, a lot of companies have gone to remote work during the pandemic, and this one company decided, well, you know what, the pandemic is waning now, so we're going to get back to doing business the way that we've always done business, and so we're going to eliminate the work from home stuff. And they started noticing that their turnover went up and their job satisfaction went down, and they were so disengaged that they didn't catch why those things were happening, because there were other employers offering this in the same line of work, offering about the same amount of pay. They were saying, you want to work from home, come on, you can work from home, we don't care. And why do some employers get so discombobulated that they can't figure it out?
So you're basically saying, so for some companies, remote work was working effectively for the team and the employees, and for other companies, it was people were leaving when they started working remotely.
No, it was the other way around.
Okay, thank you for stating that.
people people liked working from home
Yes.
because gas is $6 a gallon. I don't know if you
Right.
noticed.
Yeah.
and all for a myriad of reasons. And they were saying, no, we like to have you come in so that we can keep an eye on you. But
And then they were walking away. Yes. Okay.
yes,
So that's the trend that I'm most familiar with as well. Although I have seen it in reverse. I was just talking to one of my private coaching clients the other day, and he was saying that he may or may not stay with his company because they want people to primarily work remotely. And he really thrived on his office culture. He has a stay-at-home wife with 3 kids, and working from home has been really challenging. And he's like, "I miss the holiday parties. I miss the events." He's not like some party guy. He's like, "This was part of what made my life feel happy and rounded, was having, 2 sides of my life to, like I could go just be with all the adults, and I could come home and be with the family and love both, but to be with the family 24/7, I'm starting to feel like climbing the walls a bit here." And what am I going to do now? Go spend money to rent my own office space while I'm working for a mainstream corporation? Like, this just makes no sense whatsoever. He's like, I may even shop around because I don't know. This is just not really fitting for me. And I thought that was fascinating because that was the opposite.
yeah. Well, if you got a wife and 3 kids at home, and they're playing around, and you're sequestered in your little office someplace, and they got to be quiet. I can see how it could get draining and could get tiring. So, but
Yeah.
there's got to be balance, don't you think?
Yes. No, I think so. I think that the companies that are most likely going to come out of this whole test period with the most sustainable results, from what I'm seeing so far, is the companies who create balance and employee options, right? So maybe some people just love working alone, they love being alone, they want to be home all the time. Okay, so maybe then they're required to come to certain events, or monthly or quarterly retreats or events with the company. They have to be involved at some point in human form with other people, because that's really important for morale. And that thing we lost in COVID, like how much we realized we missed eating meals with people, like going to lunch, going to dinner, whatever it is, just like, so those elements of sort of like the old break bread, right? There's this camaraderie as old as time around things like that, about being in the same human space. But then there's another piece, which is some people love to be in the office, like this guy I was talking to. So I think giving employees some options, or if you're going to make them come in for one whole day of in-person meetings, then pick a day, keep it the same day, have them coming into office 1 or 2 days a week and be able to work from home, finding a balance. There's one last piece to this, is what COVID has also done is, if we weren't already, it's made us so much more of a global culture than we were before, including in the corporate space. So now employees are literally scattered all over the world. My husband used to work for a French company. He's American. He's Silicon Valley based. Now he works for a German company. They go on their corporate retreats in what we would say Vegas. For them was Croatia last year, which was very fun, by the way. And, so so there's people, and then his corporate retreat this year was in the Poconos, go figure, Berlin-based company, and they were all so excited to go to the Poconos. And it was just like, so there's this whole global environment where these people are working all over the world now, in many cases. I mean, this is a tech company, so it makes a little more sense, but it really is about finding what works for your company and your employees, and making that happen. What does your own company culture need?
How do you create a company culture? Is that something that is just done just just arbitrarily, or is it, at least I would think that a lot of thought needs to be taken into how you're going to create the company culture, and what ideals you're going to have, and all of that. Is it that specific, or does a lot of it just kind of show up as this is our company culture?
Of course, yes. And it so just depends. Once again, I lived in Silicon Valley for quite a while with my husband, and I saw many startup companies. They're literally just working 80 hours a week. They're not like sitting down with draft board, like trying to figure out what the company culture is supposed to be. They're eating pizza together at 2 a.m. They have a company culture. Like, there's a deep camaraderie in a small startup, where there was like an initial company culture, right? And usually that was less planned. Then you get a medium-sized startup, 200, 300 employees. things really start changing. Things become a lot more systematic. Everything's more about reports now, and sales forecasting. Things get a lot more formal. Still some resonance, some residue of that early relationship. But if it gets much bigger, now we have to say, now we're a global company. Now we have people working in 17 countries. Now we have, what is our company culture now? Or maybe it is all in one city. What is our company culture now? The people that have come in have created a very different dynamic just from being there and who they are than those first 12 people, right? So after the first 12 disciples, then you go to the next batch. No. So it's like, okay, we got to reevaluate a little bit here and see what's important to people. I think consulting your people is the number one question for starters. Asking in within each team, asking, everyone hates like getting an email survey. So asking people in person, taking surveys, whatever it is, what is most important to them? What's more valuable to them? Working less hours or having more office amenities? What is more valuable to them? Working from home more or working in the office more? What is more valuable to them? Do they like, some people love corporate events and parties. Other people dread them with like the most deep dread. So then you take an average of all that and say, okay, now let's bring our mission statement, our vision statement into this. Let's have each person create their own mission and vision statement, both for themselves. This is kind of work I would do, both for themselves as an individual, and then also as part of how that fits into the company mission and vision. And then let's start creating something that makes people excited to get up and go to work, whether that's at their desk across the hall or whether that's at the office or whether that's, 6,000 miles away.
I got to ask you, because it seems to me, and it's been my experience, that the entrepreneur and the corporate presence are two completely different animals.
Yes.
How do you coach somebody who's an entrepreneur, who's taken it from one guy, one employee, and is starting to grow and it's starting to really, how do you encourage them to make that? Because there is a switch that's got to be made, because you can't do everything yourself.
Right.
So how
right.
do you, go ahead.
Yeah. So what was the last thing? How do you
coach somebody to make that transition?
Mm-hmm. So, if I'm fortunate, it's always it's extra fun when I get to work with someone who's just doing individual coaching first. So they've been coaching around their own personal journey, both personal and professional, time management, task management, like how can I maximize my life as I'm basically becoming an executive, as I'm a startup entrepreneur. So sometimes I get fortunate to have that base, and that's really fun because you've developed a rapport, and it's really exciting to see them grow. Like, it's so exciting for me to become their like biggest fan. You have no idea. I get so excited when my clients are succeeding. But yeah, then when they're ready to grow, that kind of transitions into, something else I also do, which is leadership coaching. So you might still have some bits and pieces of that personal coaching, but a lot of it has to do with strategic leadership. How do you learn to be a leader if that's not something that naturally is in your toolbox? What if you're an introverted kind of person, but now you have a company of 20 employees? How do you, what is that persona? How much, if you don't like really hanging out with people, how do you create enough accessibility so people don't think you're being stuck up and elitist? If you love hanging out with people, how do you isolate enough to get your work done? I mean, there's just all these questions like, how do you find the balance in leadership? How do you set the tone for your company? How do you interact with your people to decide, like we just said, what kind of company culture you want, what they want, what's really going to affect the bottom line? And overall, the best bottom line is if you're happy, if they're happy, and you have a product you're passionate about, that's a great culture.
How did you get so smart?
Oh dear, don't ask my mother. She called me smarty pants from, I think, day 2. I'll say. Well,
because you're really gifted at what you're talking about. You understand it, and you were an actress, and you're an author. So you really are passionate about all of this, and you really work at it every day, don't you?
I do. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly growing. I love people. I just love people. That may have something to do with growing up in such an isolated environment, or that I was just a natural people person when I was born. But yeah, I love working with people. I love seeing people happy and healthy and productive. And like, I really mean that, not just because, I mean, there's a million jobs I could go do and probably do decently at quite a few. But I love bringing people into the best part of themselves and they're living in that fullest place. Because I've been in some really crappy places in my life and different journeys and crashed and burned several times. And, it's like I know what it's like to live when you're stuck, when you feel trapped in an environment that's not healthy, whether it's personal or professional. I know what it's like to, have resources and then have no resources, and then have, how do you build resources again? How do you, living a quality of life starts in your mind and heart, trusting your inner wisdom and your gut, and not letting your circumstances dictate your happiness. And people always like, that's right about where I get the eye roll right there. Don't let your circumstances dictate your happiness. Yeah, exactly. But hey, because guess what? I've worked with a lot of people and I know a lot of people. And if everyone who I knew who is a happy person let their circumstances dictate their happiness, they would not be very happy.
Well,
No one has a perfect life.
well, and I'll tell you, you were in one of the toughest professions that there is imaginable, because every time, like you said, you just had an audition, and every time you have an audition, chances are, most of the time, it's going to be no.
Right.
And it's going to be, you're the wrong body type, you're the wrong face, you're too young, you're too old, you're too this, you're too that, you're whatever it is.
I look like the producer's ex-wife,
Exactly. And so a lot of these decisions are made, and you're not getting a paycheck because and so now you have to go be a waitress, or you've got to go do something. I imagine you spent your fair share of waiting tables.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Food service is such an essential industry. And I am so grateful for the people who do it. And I am so grateful that I'm not doing it anymore. but this is how I actually really got, started exercising my muscles as a coach and getting trained into doing it, because I wanted to teach these passionate artists and creatives who were kind of going broke trying to pursue their dream. How could they have a healthy, balanced lifestyle and pursue their passion? Some people, they quit all their jobs, move to LA with $5,000-$10,000 in the bank and think, oh, I'm good to go. And that'll last about 3 months. Maybe, if you're lucky. So it's like, no, how do I teach them to find balance? How can we get them a remote job where they can work nights and still be free in daytimes to audition? Or how can they balance their life out with maybe they do like working in food service and that's something that's great for them. How can they have multiple pots on the stove, as I like to use, a very old reference from my grandmother, but still multiple pots on the stove, right? If you keep several things simmering, then when one thing really takes off, you can decide when you want to turn the others off. If your creative career, I used to tell them, once your creative or acting or writing career, whatever that was, once that takes off and is making more money than your day job, than your, quote unquote, in the creative world, survival job, awesome. Then you can quit the survival job. But until then, let's keep all these pots simmering, because there's nothing more miserable and unhappy than an unhappy creative that's absolutely broke. It's like, it will really it'll sap your creativity. And pretty soon you'll just be miserable. And one day you'll wake up and say, I am so blankety, blankety, blankety miserable. What am I doing? So you don't want to lose your passion, your drive. Find balance. And that applies to everyone. And like I said, for the corporate people and the entrepreneurs, it's usually bringing creative pieces back into their life.
If you had to describe one talent that an actor must have to be successful, what would it be?
Woo! Someone just asked me this recently, actually, in an interview for a magazine article. And I would say learning to hand rejection like a champ.
I agree completely. The interesting thing, I'm not sure if I was talking to you about it or not, but you know who John Edward is?
Yes. Remind
Psychic.
me again that I'm thinking of the right one.
He's a psychic medium.
Oh, yes,
And
that one.
he did Crossing Over, and he did a bunch of,
Yes.
several
I love
great
that show.
shows,
Mhm.
and I just love him to death. And I interviewed him one time, and he has a daughter who was, I think, 7 or 8 at the time, who was an actress,
Oh,
and she'd
yeah.
been in several things. And so I asked him, because I heard that he had a unique way of dealing with the auditions,
Mhm.
and he said they're not allowed to call them auditions; they call them interviews. And so we're going to interview for this thing, for this part, and it's not an audition, because an audition is like, you're not right for it, it becomes very personal. a
Mhm.
a interview is just, I'm interviewing for the job, and if it's
Mhm.
not the right fit for me, that's not that I'm a bad person, or I'm
Mhm.
stupid, or I'm short, or I'm ugly, or whatever. It's just that just not the right fit. So that was his way of saying to her that you're not who you are auditioning as. You
Mhm.
are much more than that. So, and that's,
I
I
like
think,
that.
and you get, what is it? And I'm sure you've been through more auditions than you care to remember, but what percentage of getting the part did you get when you were auditioning? Was it 10%, 5%? What was it?
Oh gosh, it depends on what. It depends on it's really hard to nail down. If it's commercials, it could be maybe 5 or 10%. But then I've also heard people have been working in Hollywood for a lifetime in commercials who the ratios are about 1 in 50 auditions. But then they get paid really well for that one that they get. So then there's like, okay, then are you doing TV? Are you doing film? Are you only doing mainstream TV and film? Are you doing like there's a whole new genre now. It used to be like independent film was like this, like, oh, super low budget, whatever. Well, now
Yeah.
independent film is like this whole massive industry. And like I said, this morning I was auditioning for Netflix. It's like, you know, it's like, where do you draw the line between independent and not independent anymore? I don't even know. That's not my area of expertise. I just do the work. But there's so many different genres in it. Also, the market is literally more flooded than ever before in history. So it's the most oversupplied market in the world, to my knowledge.
You mean as
Um,
far as talent?
Talent, to oversupplied talent. I think that less than 10% of SAG members, so that's, first of all, being a SAG member is a small percentage of actors everywhere. It's expensive to be a member of the Screen Actors Guild, but especially in LA, it's considered fairly essential. And I think less than 10%, it might even be dramatically less than 10%, but I'm not going to quote that on the air, are considered working actors that had employment that year. I think it was under 5%.
I
So
heard when I was contemplating being a thespian, and going,
woo!
and I did it in college, and I had several leads in plays and that sort of thing, and stuff. And I was talking with the director, and he said at that time there were like 35,000 people that were in SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, and he said 5% of them, or 1,500 to 1,800 actors, could actually be making a living and be called a working actor. The rest of them were just bit parts, and but the marketplace has exploded with so many shows out there
Yes.
now. Um,
Yes.
has that made it easier, or has that just opened the floodgates of more people wanting to do it?
I think it's opened the floodgates. It kind of depends. I think now I was just looking it up. The SAG currently has 160,000 members.
Holy mackerel!
And I would say the ratios are the same or worse, if you want to say it that way. But yeah, sorry, repeat your question. I got myself distracted.
Question? Did I ask a question? No,
Oh, you asked the question.
no, I asked. It was. Let's see. That's going
Oh,
back. Let's re-roll the tape. Let's
yes,
take
reroll. We'll just start over. It was my bad. I dropped the ball there because I was
that.
I was
That's
looking
all
up
right.
numbers for you. But yeah, like how many people are actually employed, and the numbers game really works against you in that industry. So when people come to me and say, "Hey, my kid is getting into acting. Could you give her some advice? Or my teenager or my college student is getting it, and give her an advice. Maybe is there anybody that could help? And of course, I always want to be helpful, but I also actually kind of take pride in being a very kind realist as well. Like, again, let's not just go into this assuming that it will work out. Let's actually look at the numbers. Let's actually, and not as a reason to discourage, but as a reason to say, how can I play the long game? How many pots do I need to have on the stove? Where am I going to live? Where's my income coming from? Like, how do you do all that? And even if you have a child, I think it's important. Like, he calls them interviews, not auditions. That's fine. That's great. And if that works well for them, but how do you kind of set them up to realize it's not just a personal rejection? Because even as an adult, as I said, like, this is the biggest part. You said, what is that, an actor really need the most to survive is, the ability to handle rejection, because the numbers are just almost impossible. You really need to know someone or be related to a famous actor to kind of have your shoe in anymore. And
the interesting thing about that is, for those of you who don't know how it works, it's a catch-22 thing. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how it used to be, is in order to become a member of the Screen Actors Guild, you have to have a speaking part in a movie, play, or commercial. But in order to get a speaking part in a play, commercial, or show, you have to be a member of Screen Actors Guild. So it's not like you can go and pay your $1,000 or whatever the dues is and become one. You have to have a speaking part in a movie, play, or commercial before you can even apply. Is that still the case?
Yes. Even that's a one-off. And now you have to, I think, have 3 speaking parts.
Oh, geez, that's even worse.
You kind of work up a ladder of checklists. Like, the first one is the hardest one to get, and then the second, and then the third, and then you actually qualify. So yes, and you should have an agent in order to get those parts. But in order to get an agent, they want you to have experience and be a SAG member, and it's this crazy juggling thing. So it's an amazing, incredible creative industry. But to survive in it now, you really need to be a multifaceted person. You need to be what we call in business have a portfolio career. That's what I have. I used to do, 90% acting and 10% my other business. And, now those numbers switch. I don't know which is 60-40, maybe. I don't know which is which. But you have to kind of become a multifaceted person. Maybe you learn to direct. Maybe you learn to be an on-air personality. Maybe you learn to do voiceover. Maybe you learn to teach, to coach. Maybe you just do something else completely entirely for the rest of your life. You want to be like a top-level yoga teacher. And you also happen to be an actor who can audition when they need to, like, you have to kind of sit around and plan it. I think that kind of acting for specifically in this conversation is an amazing part of a person's life, should you care to pursue it. But you have to make it a part, like less than 10% of your emotional well-being tied to that, in order to be a happy and productive person. And if you hit the jackpot, just like the lotto, amazing for you. But at the same time, don't go around expecting it. Just enjoy the journey. Enjoy the incredible classes you get to take. Enjoy the incredible, mind-blowingly creative, artistic people you get to talk with and meet every day. And sitting in Starbucks, hearing people pitching their screenplays to studios over coffee. And go for the experience, but don't make it like, I'm a failure if I don't get in.
How important is having really good improvisational skills?
Very important. I mean, that's considered, pretty much a fundamental. In fact, a lot of reputable agents and managers don't even take actors unless they've had improv training. If you've had improv training, you can probably audition quite easily for most commercial auditions. You might not be fully prepared for, the whole dramatic TV and film and the very specific formulas used in like half-hour comedy, for example. But it's literally a fundamental. Improv is a fundamental. Basically, it just means operating outside your comfort zone naturally. That's
Yes.
the whole point. And we know it. If you're consumer only, people tend to know it as a form of entertainment. But what it really, and it does, it has formulas, and I've studied at some of the best schools. But what it really is about as a tool of the trade, is learning to just be spontaneous, naturally, whatever the circumstances are given.
And sometimes those circumstances can be quite unique and can be out of your comfort zone.
Very much so. Very much so. Which also happens on set all the time.
Which when I was in high school and we were doing in the improvisational class, and I had a good friend and they just took a chair and they put the chair in the middle of the room, and then you were going to sit on the chair, and that was it. And then you would pick somebody, and or somebody would they did a rotation, and somebody would interact with that person in the chair and come up with what the scenario is, and they would go from there, right?
Yep,
And so
exactly.
the person was this friend of mine who was sitting on the chair, and so it was my turn. And so I went and knocked on an imaginary door and said, "Don, hurry up, get out of the bathroom, I gotta go." And so he then had to play the part of taking a poop on the bathroom, on the
Yep.
toilet. So
Yep. No,
and
that's perfect. It's a lot of fun doing that to your fellow teammates when you're
it is.
you spring it on them.
And he was not prepared for that, but it
No.
was fun. And
Yeah.
but in any event, that's what. And I encourage you, if you have never done acting, and acting has helped me in so many ways in my life, is that just being poised to be
Mhm.
able to know that you can respond to a situation. It helps in sales, it helps in
Mhm.
management, it helps in speaking, it helps in doing what I'm doing now. It helps in so many ways.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's why you can do what you do, and get people actually excited about what you do. It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's, it really helps when you take the tools of communication that you learn in acting and authenticity, and then bring your own natural, like, joy de vivre to it. It's a great formula, right? Like, I literally do love my life. I really do love people. And sometimes I get my feelings hurt when people will say, like, well, I don't even know if she's genuine. Like, she's an actress too. Like, how do you even know? And I get really offended because I'm just like, man, dang it. I was like 100% being authentic with you in that moment. Like, bonding with you. And just because I look like I'm happy, but a lot of people don't like happy people.
Why is that? You need to explain that to me.
Because it just shows them where they're not happy. And it also makes them realize that they might be partly responsible for their own unhappiness, and just blaming others isn't really a solution to find true joy. But
Yes, indeed. Finding true joy is a lifelong pursuit for some of us. And,
yeah,
and some think that my show's called Positive Talk Radio, and some people go, "Oh, come on, positive talk. You can't do that all the time, and you can't." But I believe you can.
you can.
Even in negative situations, I think you can.
Yes. No, because we have to. Because if we know that we are going to be fed a diet, like, I barely even watch the news, and I'm still very well informed because it just leaks in no matter how hard you try. You can't even open your phone without something popping up, or you can't even talk to your mother without hearing something about the news, or, like, you cannot hide anymore. You literally
Nope.
cannot, unless you're going to go to a monastery in Tibet with no electronics at all. You're going to get it, right? But we're so inundated with all of the negatives. Because why? Because we're sensory beings, and the advertisers know this. The more negative the story, the more traumatic the story, the more dramatic the story, the more people are going to kind of gawk and watch and see the advertisements. So positive stuff gets less advertising dollars in some sense, because people are attracted to moaning and groaning, and how miserable we all are, and how the world is getting to be a worse place. And I'm like, hold on just a minute. I just had a conversation, like, last week with a great academic friend of mine who, we were in college together, and she came to visit for a few days, and we were talking about how the world is really getting to be a better place. and how she even talks about this with her students, because her college students, 18, 19, 20, 21, they're like, the world is all going to in a handbasket, and like it's all over, and we'll be lucky to still be here in 10 years. And she's like, no, wait a minute now, wait a minute. And start kind of breaking down the realities of, she and I both studied history in college. So, looking at the past, understanding how things used to be, even 50 years ago, even a century ago, and where they are now, or even, in law, in women's rights, in any kind of, emerging minority or majority rights, all of our differences, right? There's so many more opportunities. Like, we're constantly growing and changing. It's a less brutal world than it used to be. Does it perfect? No. But, I'm a woman, so I'm going to say that it matters to me that, and shockingly so, that it wasn't until the 1973, I think 1970s, where a woman could challenge her husband legally for abusing her.
Yep.
Because it was considered just normal to smack a wife around, to take her without her consent, any of this. What? So like the younger generation, they're like, no. We're like, yes, you don't even understand. Like, we are progressively getting to a better place. Technology has opened the sharing of information, which can be really negative and has created a lot of depression and anxiety, but also gives us the opportunity to realize that when we, instead of just falling into that trap, when we unify, when we bring together our passion and our talents for improving our world, we have so much more power to do it than ever before. It's actually a really hopeful time to be alive, but it's just, I guess, a matter of perspective.
Well, no, it really is. It's because as a student of history myself, if you look at what's going on with between Russia and Ukraine, and you go back to 1943, that was
Mm-hmm.
happening all over the world, and it was, I believe it's like 60 million people died during the Second World War, and it was, our world was shaking apart at that time. We recovered from it. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to recover from this as well, and
Yeah.
we're going to continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why hopefully we can figure out, and explain to me. You're a student of humanity. Why is it that we wait till we're absolutely on the brink before we go fix stuff?
What is it my grandmother used to say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. So, we now know that everybody knows now, because it's, as you and I are talking, it's going to be in the 90s here for the next week and a
In
half
Seattle, you guys.
in Seattle. Yeah. And which, by the way, because of who we are, nobody has air conditioning up here because
Nope.
we don't need it. But now we've
Nope.
got 10 days in the 90s. There are some people that
Mhm.
are, so drink lots of water,
Yeah, right.
don't, take care of yourselves. But
Take a trip up into Mount Rainier National Park, get up in that alpine air, cool down a little bit.
exactly. But we always wait to fix it until it's near the end, and stuff. So I wish we would stop doing that. But I guess that's the
Well,
human way.
we need to train new leaders with new
Mhm.
mindsets. And
We need to get new younger leaders of this generation would be good.
that's what I'm talking about, because otherwise I'll just have to zip it. But otherwise, yes, younger leaders of our generation. Um, yes. No, but for real, like, this is where it's at. Education of our young people who are really suffering a lot. We've talked about this on other shows with anxiety and depression because of this information overload of negativity, because of this belief that you were meant to be someone extraordinary. And if you haven't read the book, and I'm going to get the title exactly right because you're going to recognize it. Yes, if you haven't read the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, look it up. It is a huge bestseller, including in the younger generation. And I have learned so much from that book, because guess what? It is mathematically impossible for every child born to become exceptional. That's the definition in itself, makes that impossible. What about just being good at something you love to do and being proud of having a happy life, free to do the things you choose and be with the people you love. You don't have to be the celebrity. So for those, I just had someone came into my office today and she said, oh my goodness, my son, and I apologize for my schnauzer. Gracie, come here. She said,
Oh, Gracie wants to say hi.
He does. This lady said my son, who's I think he's in his late 20s. She's like, he's lost 3 of his friends in the last 6 months who chose to not be in this world anymore, and he's really having a hard time dealing with that. And there's this pressure that we all have to be exceptional, and it's really become destructive. And even though our parents have had the best intentions of giving us every opportunity, also, you know what? To be a realist, which I am, surprisingly, for liking to be joyful, to be an optimistic realist, I like to say.
Sure.
What about teaching kids like how amazing it is to just love your life? You don't have to be the president. You don't have to be a movie star. You don't, because everyone feels like they're failing, and they're so depressed and they're so anxious that life isn't always worth being around for. And that's not the life we want to create. These people, the younger generation, they have such a passion for the world. They're, of course they have ambitions, but they're less driven by the ambitions of money than, say, my generation was, which is all about who's got the job that was paying more and what kind of car were they driving and who were they dating. And of course that still exists, but there's a much greater awareness in this improving world of ours and the younger generation about the rest of the world, understanding other cultures, understanding what needs to be done, whether it's for the environment, whether it's for education, whether it's for women's rights in developing countries, whether it's, there's so much. And they're like, I want to be a part of that. And we need to tap into that and let them realize that if they want to really be exceptional, instead of having to become a famous actor, what if they just learn how to teach kids in Rwanda to start businesses? Do you know how much, probably, I'm just going to say, even for myself as an actor, more satisfying truly in the end that is to see those lives transformed? And if you happen to like acting and tell stories and you get to do that for part of your life, that's freaking amazing. But how about finding those fulfilling places where you just enjoy your life and you're not measuring yourself by anyone else's standard? No FOMO, no comparing, just loving what you do and loving your life. And now that is, I think, something that parents can teach their kids, learn by example. We have a whole new generation of leaders that care about the world and the environment we live in and the people in it. But they need our love and attention right now.
They do. But you're absolutely right, is that it doesn't matter, really, honestly. At the end of the day, we're here for such a short period of time. It doesn't matter that you have to excel at everything. If you are excelling at being kind to yourself and being kind to other people around you, that's enough.
Yes.
You don't have to be, and plus the fact that you know a lot more stars than I do, but I'm willing to bet that some of them are very unhappy people.
It's a brutal life. And, since I work so much around self-development, personal development and self-improvement, you certainly realize that it's our own self-image is really what gets us in the end, either way. You can win $1 million and fall apart because it's so out of your comfort zone, or you can lose a job that makes hardly anything and fall apart because that's out of your comfort zone. You could be famous, you could be not. It's anything. It's really about, how do you believe yourself to be? And what about living the best version of you that feels natural? What is the best version of you that feels natural? Where do you feel at your best, your most energized, your healthiest? It doesn't mean that just because you're really naturally good at video games, that's all you should ever do. But maybe creating video games could be an incredible career, but what makes you happy and passionate? And guess what? And I would say this too, for the younger generation, it doesn't have to be your profession. You can have, as I've said already, you can have your day job, your job that's okay, kind of, but definitely pays the bills, which is great. Makes you secure. You can afford your car, you can afford your house, you can afford all your basic needs. And then in your free time or evenings and weekends, you're doing some passion project or humanitarian project or art project, or you're taking acting classes that just makes your life literally worth living. Your career doesn't have to be the only place where you can live out your passion. So find the balance and give yourself a break already.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I can't think of anything better than having a job, doing what you're doing, and then acting in community theater. They don't make any money doing that, but they get the joy of creating. And
Yeah.
that really is, it's money be damned. It has nothing to do with it, really. It's the joy of creating.
Yes. Yes. And this is my whole life. This is why I pursue my profession, as an emotional wellness specialist, and all the things that I do, my book, my writings, all of that is because it's a balance. And I keep acting and I keep my agents because I also love it and I have a commitment to it, and I still get to audition and act, and it's amazing. But it doesn't define who I am anymore, because as a younger actor, it did define who I was, and I was extremely unhappy because I just felt like I was such a loser because the numbers are freaking impossible, right? So it's kind of like the lottery. You got to be prepared to win, or buy the ticket, if you will. I don't encourage lotteries, but anyway, my husband plays them. I don't. It's okay. It's a family
Well,
thing.
tell him tell him thank you for paying more taxes.
So that's what I tell him. I was like, thanks for supporting our infrastructure. But yeah.
No, it's I, in all the studying that I've done, and I think then one of the reasons why, by the way, we're talking with Ann Scottlin. She's got the wonderful book that is called
Live for Joy.
Live for Joy. It's in the mail. It's coming to me. I'll be getting it soon.
Yay.
And Live for Joy, because at the end of the day, when you're, I don't know, when you're 80, 90 years old, and it's your time to leave the planet, and you've worked your butt off all that time, and you've earned a buttload of money, and you and or you haven't, and you're still unhappy. You miss so much if you can't live with joy. If you can't just enjoy every day. When you walk outside, just enjoy the surroundings. Stop and look around. A lot of us don't even do that.
Yes. No, life is worth living, and that's the whole point in every teaching that talks about being present. It's not about necessarily being present in the negative, but being present in the positive and learning to focus on what you really enjoy. And if you want to find, how can you become more aware of your joy? What's giving it to you and what's sucking it away, right? If you want to become more aware of just how you notice life and how that can improve and create more joy for you, then I also always give my free gift to all of Kevin's people, which is a 1-week joy journal. It's 2 questions in the morning, 2 questions at night. There's not a lot of writing. It's just creating awareness. It's full color. And I'm going to give you the URL. It's a hidden page on my website. It's www.annscottlin.com/joy journal. So that's ANNESCOTTLIN.com/joy journal. You can print it out and handwrite in it. It's colorful, it's beautiful, or you can type in it digitally if that's your jam, and give it a test. See what is really bringing you joy and what's taking it away. You might be really surprised, actually. And in just 1 week, it can start to change your life by just changing your awareness.
And you'll end up being more joyful.
And you'll end up being more joyful.
Because you're going to have more fun with it. And I really appreciate you. And you've been on the show before. You're going to come on the show again, because we have a good time every time that we
yes,
chat.
we do.
And you are so delightful. You were
always a pleasure.
So, but I do have to ask you, getting back to the acting thing a little bit.
Yes.
Which I think is a crime. But why are actors, as in men, and actresses or actors as in women, why are they treated differently in Hollywood?
It's the game as old as time. In this country, it's the value that we still discriminate. We still discriminate around value between sexes, and including, a wide range of other sexual preferences. There is a stereotype that we've allowed to continue for far too long. We almost passed the vote in the 70s for equal pay in this country.
We did.
Realize that was 50 years ago, you guys.
Yep.
And in the progressive countries, the more progressive, I'm going to call them more progressive countries in Europe and in Scandinavia, that is not a thing. They think it's crazy that Americans still have this. So it's a universal issue, and we can all help by just recognizing the value of human life, the value of all human beings being equally intelligent and differently gifted.
Well said. Very well said. And
Thank you.
since we're coming to our time together, I'm going to honor our time so that, because I know you got an abundance of things that you could be doing other than talking to me. But I want to give you a moment to tell our audience, the ones that are listening now and the ones that will be listening in the future, anything that you would like them to know. By the way, this is Ann Scottlin. Go to annscottlin.com. I'll get that out of the way for you.
Thank you. Yes, and that's Anne with an E and Scottlin, Lin. Yes, one thing I could tell you, is every day, wake up with something that you're grateful for, even if it's just that you have a fan in your room this week. Wake up and think of something you're grateful for. Try to notice the positives instead of the negatives, the breeze instead of the heat. Give yourself a chance. It's just programming. It's just programming. We have joy easily accessible to us. And I also coach individuals and groups. Reach out. You can email me. I'm going to give you my personal email address, contact@annscottlin.com. I would love to hear from you in just any ways that I can help collaborate with you to bring you more joy in your life. And thank you so much, Kevin McDonald.
Since you are a coach and you are a master coach, can I run something by you real quick?
Oh, yes, please.
I'm coming up with something that I'm calling, and it's based upon a idea that Pete Carroll uses, who's the coach of the Seahawks. And one of the things that he determines who he's going to draft or not is somebody who has what he terms as grit. And so I've come up with a term and an acronym for grit, and I call it authentic grit. Can I tell you what it means to me?
Yes, please.
Authentic grit. Oh, bring puppy back. There we go.
I'm here. Sorry, technical issue.
That's quite
Noise
all right.
control.
That's why these shows are live, because they're real.
Right. They're real.
Exactly.
Yes. So I want to know about grit.
So authentic grit is this. G stands for gratitude, always developing personally, professionally, and spiritually. R stands for resilient, never quit, strength of character, positive, passionate, and humble. Indomitable spirit, hardiness, excellence of purpose, powerful, kind, and honest. And tough, mentally determined, hardworking, courageous, and creative. What do you think about that?
Oh, I love it. You don't understand. You're talking to like the queen of acronyms. Words make me so happy. And acronyms are even better than words because it's just a word of words. So that's amazing. Gratitude, resilient, indomitable spirit, and tough. And I can't remember all of the other words you said, but those were the acronym for grit, right?
Correct.
I love that.
Because grit is, and by the way, some people are born with grit. That means that they're just tougher than others. It is something that can be attained and it can be learned. But grit also, in and of itself, can also be used in a negative way.
Yes.
And so that's why authentic grit is more of a positive, because you are making the intention. And I suppose I could also, instead of indomitable spirit, I could use intention.
Ooh, I like intention because, the kind of indomitable is similar to tough in a way. I like intention. I talk a lot about intention. I say, I coach people intentionally. I want, living life strategically. I think intention is really a great tool to think about.
That's why I'm talking to my coach, Anne, right here, because she just made me change that, and so I'm going to do that, because intentionality is really, being grateful for who you are and what gifts you've got, but being intentional in purpose of everything that you do is what really can set you apart even if you're not going to ever be a millionaire, and most
Yeah.
people are not going to be, but
Hmm.
if you can at the end of the day say, I was grateful, I was intentional, and I loved my life, and I was resilient. I bet
Hmm.
every time I had a problem, I bounced back from it, and I'm tough.
Yeah.
And at the end of your life, you can't ask for more than that.
No, no, because you can be satisfied with what you have worked to achieve, and grit is important, meaning we all have to have a backbone at some point. We all have to, like you say, learn to be resilient. Resilience is a learned thing. I can see from experience. Sometimes we have to be tough. Um, Being grateful is huge, and I love that that it's number one, of course, because it has
Yes.
to be. Um, because having grit is sort of a piece of life, but it doesn't mean that life has to be miserably hard. Grit is a piece. It is one of the best tools in the toolbox of life to enable you to live a happy and healthy and successful life. But just because you don't have to use that tool all the time. And the more you focus on the joy and the positives, then you have plenty of reserves of grit whenever you need it, but you don't use it up on like getting mad at that driver in front of you.
What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't ever do that. But I
Yeah,
try. I I try. I really, really try.
Hey, you need to move to LA if you think you have problems.
Well, I'll give you an example. This just happened the day before yesterday. I was in a parking lot, and a car pulled out of the spot. It's a prime spot. It was right on the front row, right next to where the buildings were. And they pulled out, and I was sitting there, and I was waiting for them to leave so that I could pull in. And then there was a car on the other side that was waiting and it turned out to be a woman of all things. Now, if it was a hairy guy, I might have just taken the spot and said, "Sorry, sucker," but I gave her the spot, and then I swore. So so I was like, "God damn it!" and went on and stuff. So while I did the right thing, but I didn't do it intentionally the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, yes. And I think the right thing is also right. It's different for everybody every day.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm just use the word blessing for lack of a better word. We get a bonus, we get a blessing out of doing a kindness. And sometimes we have to be assertive for ourselves, like this is the most important job interview of my life, and I'm going to take the spot.
Exactly.
Should you do it if you just need groceries? Probably not. So, what's right in the moment is always changing. And that's like, I think that gives us a comfort zone too, to like give ourselves more permission. And again, with the grit, use the grit. You have to have it to survive, but it's a tool. You don't have to like be clawing your way through life. I think that's what I used to feel like. It was like you had to have grit and you had to be tough. And I was like, that sounds freaking exhausting. And
It
then I
is.
realized, oh, you don't have to do it all the time.
Yes, indeed. And no, it is. So, and Scotland, thank you so much for being here. I just enjoy our time together. You are
Oh,
just such an amazing human being.
thank you, Kevin. You as well. It's always such a pleasure. Grace says thank you too. She's falling asleep on my lap now that I'm in the office alone today, so I have to babysit her myself. Say goodbye,
And
Grace.
well, and she's not barking anymore either. So
No,
she was
she's not. She's getting cuddles, so she's happy finally.
that was all she wanted.
That's
And
all. Gotta love the animals.
sometimes in life, all we want is a little cuddle.
A little cuddle, a little hug, a little share the love. And when you share the love, when you receive it, it takes a little less grit to live.
Well said. Couldn't say that better myself. Thank you so much for being here. Go to AnnScotland.com. Get the book and hire her as a coach. It'd be well worth it. I'm telling you. Indeed. Stay right there. I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of PositiveTalkRadio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named PositiveTalkRadio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we got.